Prepare for total domination.
I've got a golden ticket.
That's a winner!
Hey, David Scharf here for The Winning Ticket. We've been doing this show since last November, and I just want to take the time to thank everyone who takes the time to listen to what we do here, and also appreciate all your feedback. And part of the feedback that we have received is that you guys want to hear more about poker. So this morning I had an opportunity to spend a couple hours with two St. Louis poker players, Chris Audrain and Justin Colony. Had a bunch of fun with them, and I cannot wait for you guys to hear their interview. So let's get to it. Hey, David Scharf here. I'm sitting here with Justin Colony and Chris Audrain. Guys, how you doing this morning?
Doing great. Thanks for having us.
Awesome. Feeling good. A little tired. Had a little minor emergency last night trying to put together some equipment in the backyard. But besides that, we're doing great.
All right, you got a green screen behind you. So what's going on with that?
So I do. I'm in the sports cards and sports memorabilia industry. So whenever I go live, I got to put some cool stuff in the background to grab the audience a little bit.
All right. Well, so before we get to know you a little bit, I'm curious about that. I watched a documentary a few years ago where this guy was burning all his sports cards, that they were not valuable anymore. The market had gone in the tank, or maybe it was 3-4 years ago. Do you know anything about that? Have you ever heard anything about that? And let's talk about the value of sports memorabilia in the last few years going through the roof, right?
I have not seen that. I'll have to look into that.
I'm going to have to find it for you.
Yeah, but I mean, so basically back kind of almost, and I know Justin collected a lot too, but in the early 90s when we collected a lot of cards, you couldn't really tell. You'd think you'd have great cards, but there wasn't really too much internet or investigating back then. Right. So everyone thought their cards were worth a ton of money, right? well, nobody knew that they were making thousands of millions and quadrillion prints. So everyone who thought their cards were worth money really were not. So that might have been having something to do with the guy burning his cards.
It was unbelievable. Yet I'll have to find this documentary. I just couldn't believe my eyes. He was taking thousands and thousands of boxes of unopened cards and putting them in a bonfire, and had a party to do it. And now, now they're through the roof, right? Collectibles a little, they've tapered off a little bit in the last year or so, but what was it, before COVID or something? There was some point a few years ago where collectibles, especially baseball cards, football cards, went through the roof.
I think really during COVID, right, Chris?
Yeah.
People sit at home all day and you needed something to do, and that was a big hobby for them. I mean, I think I even got into it a little bit more than I typically do as well.
All right, I'm going to share my little baseball card story. I like to share this. I used to drink a little bit when I hung out in Vegas many years ago. I don't know when McGwire hit his 62nd home run. I know exactly where I was. I was at the Desert Inn in Las Vegas, and it doesn't exist anymore, but I was quite heavily intoxicated, and I was very excited because I had 31 McGwire rookies sitting at home here in St. Louis. Well, I lived in Phoenix at the time, and my parents had moved, and they had put all my whatever I owned, whatever was mine, out of my bedroom of my house I grew up in. They put in my grandparents' basement. Well, my grandparents were in the same house for over 40 years, and they had one flood. And it just so happened to be a couple weeks after my parents moved my baseball card collection to the basement. So I flew back to St. Louis thinking I'm going to pick up, I was pretty big gambler back then, and just in general of whatever I could get my hands on. And I was flying back to St. Louis thinking I'm going to get, they were $1,200 a card, after that. And I was thinking if I could get about $1,000 a piece for those cards, that would get me back in action, give me a little bankroll.
Oh yeah.
And I get back home, and the first thing my dad picked me up from the airport. I said, "Hey, take me by Grandpa's house, and I want to pick up my baseball cards." He goes, They never told me. They never told me
Oh,
that
no.
the whole baseball card collection got ruined. So that's my baseball card story. And the rest of them, it was not as valuable as just those set. But I used to buy rookie cards. That used to be my my thing. All right, guys, enough of my gambling stories. We're not here to talk about me. Let's talk about you two, Justin. You said you're from Pittsburgh. Let's talk about how you ended up here and how you guys met.
For me, I mean, I've been here in the St. Louis area for about 20 years, but yeah, I grew up in Pittsburgh, born and raised Steeler fan. Came down here in the mid 90s, actually probably right around Mark McGwire home run time. So I've got a funny story for that later maybe, but yeah, so came down here, went to high school through here, played a lot of baseball, played in high school, went to technical college. So I didn't play college baseball. But as soon as I got out of high school, I started looking for places to play and found some local St. Louis men's baseball leagues. And after a couple of years, I actually started managing my own team and ran a team for 15, 16 years, I think it was. And that's actually how I met Chris. And we just kind of, we actually never played on the same team, always just played on opposing teams and just kind of bonded and started talks about collecting memorabilia together or just playing poker together and just became really good friends.
Chris, a little bit of your background. Are you from St. Louis?
Yeah, so I was pretty much grew up in the ghetto down in South City. I lived with my mom, and then I ended up going into high school at Lindbergh in South County. My dad moved out there, so he's like, "You're not going down to high school in the city." So moved out to Lindbergh, played ball there, then ended up going to Mizzou. I was going to try out for the Mizzou team, which at that time, we're talking early 2000s, 2005, 2006, they weren't really taking any walk-ons at all. There was kids throwing 90 and they weren't taking them. So I played club ball. We started a club team there. So I played club ball at Mizzou. And the experience was amazing. We did everything that the Big 12 team did. We traveled to Nebraska and we went down to Florida, Iowa, Colorado every other weekend. So it's kind of where my baseball career came. And then finally, when we graduated, I did that for 5 years, and then I came to St. Louis, and I didn't even know St. Louis had like a men's league. So one of my buddies, two mutual friends, were like, "Hey, we met each other at a bar one night." He's like, "You play baseball?" He's like, "You should come." You know, he didn't want to ask me to play because he's never seen me play. So kind of with baseball players, it's like, "Hey, why don't we go play catch first, and then and then I'll let you know if you can play or not." So we went and played catch for about 3 minutes, and he's like, "Okay, all right, okay, you want to come play?" So that's when I started playing in the league. And then, like Justin said, he was running a different team, so we played against each other a lot. And then that was it. I mean, I started selling sports memorabilia. He won a helmet, so I went to deliver it to his house. We just got chatting. I was like, I don't need to mail it. I'll just drive to your house because we lived like 15 minutes away at the time. We started chatting, and then I can't remember exactly how poker came up, but I think he may have saw something that I posted on Facebook about poker maybe, and he's like, "Hey, I run a poker league, home league or whatever." He's like, "Why don't you come play?" And then that kind of kicked everything off.
Yeah. So how soon, I mean, okay, you guys became friends through baseball, correct?
Yes.
Right. All right. And how soon after that did you know you had same interest in poker?
Pretty quickly, I would say. What do you think, Justin? Maybe a few months?
Yeah, I would. Yeah, like Chris said, I mean, we just started hanging out, talking about memorabilia and things. And I think he probably came down to my basement and saw some of my toys, and then saw the poker table, and I said, "Hey, I've got a home league. Come on in," and the rest is history.
All right. So you guys play in your home league, and you guys are not at the same level of play at this point. Talent, however you want to put it, background, and where your games are at, or would you say your games were pretty similar when you guys
back
at
then?
That point?
Yeah, back then.
You go ahead, Chris. You can take that one.
No, pretty far apart. I played a lot, and I don't think he played as much back then. And I was already kind of starting to get into studying because I really only started playing. I started playing serious poker like around 2000. What was it? 18, I think. Yeah, right. Well, I've always played, but not like I went to WSOP. Let's say I went to travel and play in June of 2018. So it really hasn't been that long for me. I've had a lot of success in a short amount of time. I've been very fortunate with that. But when I really started to actually study poker, I was already kind of doing ahead of the game compared to where Justin was kind of just playing, for fun.
Probably, for me, I had played for years. But for me, like Chris said, I was always a recreational player. I mean, I probably played for 20 years. Well, I don't want to say 20 years, probably a good 15 years. But I mean, we were there gambling. I mean, we weren't even talking about even basic concepts or strategy or building a foundation or even talking about things as simple as positioning. I mean, it was all just about having fun, having a couple of beers, and that's really kind of how that started. And then probably just before COVID, probably summer, for me at least, summer of 2019, my baseball playing days were pretty much done, and I was looking for a new hobby, and my golf swing wasn't that great. So, I was like, well, let's give this poker thing an opportunity. So that was my new hobby, and things just kind of took off after that. Obviously there was a little bit of a delay with COVID. That really put a delay on my development. But since we've kind of gotten back in the swing of things, things have started to work back out.
Yeah. So you guys became friends, and I know that the competitive sports, and we can turn that right into really much anything, especially games, and poker being both of your specialty now is where you're putting most of your, I assume most of your energy outside of family life, right, and work life. But the competitive, does it give you the same feeling of winning at poker, or maybe even better than competitive baseball? Because I know you guys took baseball awful serious.
For me, it's very similar. Very similar. I mean, the feeling of winning is a lot like winning a championship in baseball. It's definitely similar for me.
All right.
You don't know much about that feeling, though, do you, Chris? About winning a championship?
That's all right. Yeah, get it out. Get your cheap shots out.
So
You guys aren't together right now.
I kind of figured that was coming.
Chris has me on the poker. I'll give him that right now. I'm trying to make a run, but like he said, though, it's very, very, very competitive. I'm a very competitive person. I mean, I'm very passionate. Obviously, the money and everything is great, and it is. But for me, I like to win. I like to have a hobby, and and it's something else I think that makes Chris and I such good friends and just happy for each other whenever the other wins at poker or whatever. I mean, it's a genuine bond there. But on the baseball side of things, my men's team, the Gateway Indians, 7 championships in the last 14 years. So
wow.
Chris's team, they always give us a run for our money, but hopefully he's still playing. I'm done. So hopefully this year they'll get one this year, now that I'm out of the way.
Oh, wow. I like it. So you guys have both found success early in your, I'm not going to say this is what you guys are doing full time, right? You both have jobs, you both have families. We're going to talk about that in just a second. But we're talking about 3, 4, 5 years taking the game serious. Chris, we'll start with you. When did you know that this is something that you wanted to pursue as more than recreational?
So when I was excuse me, when I was at Mizzou, I would play online like constantly. Besides when I was playing baseball, but and of course doing my studying, if you want to call it that. But
hey man, I went to Arizona State. I know all about studying.
But I played a lot of poker, and when I started playing, I wanted to get better, so I was just reading. I mean, I was reading books by Helmuth and just beginner books, Brunson. And that's kind of when I started to understand like it was more than just a gambling game. Like it's weird because every time like people who don't know much about the game or don't study, it's hard for them to realize they think it's just playing poker, but there's so many different aspects to give you those statistical advantages, even small statistical advantages. So once I started to realize and read about that, like, wow, there's a lot more to this game than just looking at your cards and throwing money in the pot. That's when I started taking it pretty serious. When I came back to St. Louis, I had never played. I actually did play a few tournaments down in Boone County at Mizzou, but I never played cash at a casino. And one of my buddies did all the time. He doesn't really play much anymore, but he's like, "Why don't you come play?" So we used to go like twice a week and play 3-6 limit. And I thought it was fun at the time, but looking back, it was probably the most miserable thing I ever did. It's a good learning game, but it's yeah. We can talk about that at a different time. That's 3-6 limit. It is what it is. But I started playing that, and then it's funny because I played poker and I knew all about all tournaments and everything, but I never even knew there was a Heartland Poker Tour. I didn't know there were I didn't know there was a WPT. I didn't know there were WSOP circuits. All I watched on TV was like the main events. So when I started to research, a little bit more into it in 2018, I was like, I'm gonna go to Vegas and just try to play one of these 50 events or whatever it was, 55 events. So I talked the wife into letting me go. It's a funny story because I get there, I buy into, I think it was a 2,200, which at the time was a lot of, decent chunk of change for me. I swear to you, I got in the first 2 hours, I got jacks 3 times, queens, kings, aces, and I probably won one pot. And I was like, what the hell is going on? I know at that time I was playing okay, but I wasn't playing, I'm not at the level I'm at now. So the next day, I buy in June 19th, I buy into a shootout. And it's a $1,500 shootout. And I didn't realize it was a shootout. I thought it was just a $1,500 event. So we're playing, and I think I knocked out the first player, and we get down to 3 players really fast, 3 or 4 players. And I look at the dealer and I go, "Are we going to get any more players?" And the guy looks at me like I have 8 heads. He goes, "This is a shootout, right?" So then I have to play it off. I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot. I had no idea I was playing a shootout. So anyway, we're the first table down the heads up. It's me and I don't know if you've ever heard of him. A kid named Arthur Conan. He's from France. He's just turned 21 years old. He had a lot of success over in France, over in Europe, and we played heads up. We were the first table down the heads up. It's like 3 p.m. I'm thinking I'm gonna get to enjoy the rest of my day in Vegas. We play heads up for 7.5 hours.
Wow.
It was miserable. But I did end up finally taking him over and making day 2. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
And that was pretty much my very first actual cash World Series of Poker cash. But now that kid he's great. He's won a couple high limit tournaments. I think he has a couple million in earnings. But looking back, it was miserable at the time, but it was a good experience to play heads up for that long.
Justin, when did you guys, I know you guys, obviously you're friends, you talk a lot. Did you make this transition into taking it seriously at the same time, or did you have different paths to that?
Mine was definitely a different path. Again, like I said, I mean, from 2010 probably to 2019, I would go and play daily tournaments and things like that, $60 buy-in, $100 buy-ins here and there. I'd have a couple little cashes on occasion. I think in 2018 or 17, maybe I tried a couple of satellites in the Heartland tours and things like that. No success. Again, still not really knowing the ins and outs of poker. Still learning those, obviously. And then in summer of 2019, I got involved with one. It was one where when Chris and I really started to, kind of bond a little bit more, start talking strategy, start working on a little bit. I had an okay little score in a $400 buy-in in July. And then in November of 19, they had the Heartland Poker Tour had its season finale, $2,500 buy-in. And I'm like, man, I want to get into this. And I'm like, man, $2,500 though, for me, that's most I've ever even thought about spending. Well, I happened to win a Survivor tournament or won 2,000 in a Survivor tournament the week before. And I'm like, okay, there's my buy-in. I said, let's try it. And I sat down for my flight, and I'm 20 minutes into this tournament. And I don't know how familiar you guys are. Well, I know Chris is with Craig Casino, Heartland Poker Tour legend, if you will.
Yes.
And 20 minutes in, I get into a hand with Craig Casino, and I think he 3-bet me, I 4-bet him, and he has kings and I have aces. And I double up, right there, like within 20 minutes.
Nice.
And Chris actually walks over to me, and I'll never forget. He goes, "Hey, do you know who that was you just took out?" I'm like, "I don't know who it is." Like I had no clue. I'm like, it's just another guy to me, And he goes, "Dude, that guy's like, great." And
another guy just giving me his chips, right?
Yeah. So I've got this guy that I've taken out of the tournament 20 minutes in, where for me, I'm putting my life on the line here for $2,500. And this guy's got over $1 million in career earnings. And once I'd won that hand, I was, and I'm like, okay, obviously I can do this, and went on a remarkable run in that tournament with Chris, where we ended up both of us final tabled that tournament. And
wow.
Once that happened, I was hooked.
Yeah, I think that 45,000 might get me on my way, and it's easier. And we're going to move right into this. This is a great transition right into and I ask all poker players that I get a chance to sit down with, whether it be on the show or not, and because it's something that I haven't been able to find. And Justin, I know you and I talked a little bit before we started about this, and Chris, we're going to start with you in this, and then we'll get with you, Justin. A poker life balance. Before we start having fun and talking about how you guys make these final tables together and success in such a short time in the game. But I really want to know how you guys are both married with kids and you still work, right? And we'll talk about transition and maybe going total professional, where that's all you're doing is playing. But I want to talk about poker life balance. It's something that I haven't been able to rein in. And I even have a 20-year partner. My wife is fully supportive of me taking the time. I'm the one that's not able to put the balance together, even though I have the support. So Chris, if you don't mind, I'd like to start with you. Let's talk about your work, your home, and poker life, and how it comes together and works. Because you talked a little bit earlier about, your wife let you, and we laugh about that and we have fun with that, right? But it's kind of true, right? You got to, your partner has to be okay with, whoever's in your life has to be okay with what you're doing. Otherwise, you can't play your best game.
Yeah,
right?
100%.
Yeah, so I'd like to hear a little bit about. I know it's a little personal, but I'd like to know. It's a question that because I'm not able. The reason why I'm more curious about it than anything is I'm not able to put it together, and I have the support. So how does it work for you?
It's tough, very tough. So when I started kind of doing my own thing, opened my own business and everything, I was very successful with like the cards and memorabilia and stuff like that. My wife was actually able to quit working. So earlier, like when I first started playing, she was a lot more. It was, and we only had 2 kids at the time as well. So she didn't mind it as much. It is very hard nowadays to find a balance with her. It's hard for her to take care of 3 kids like if I'm gone. So it's impossible basically right now, probably until they're older, for me to try to play full time. We try to balance it out a lot where she's pretty lenient on letting me, kind of me and Justin go play, a weekend, a month, sometimes just somewhere close, take a flight in on the weekend, fly back Sunday or Monday. We've gone to Minnesota. We go to Iowa. couple different places. She's let me go to Florida, and then obviously she knows about the WSOP every year, so she knows I'm going to Vegas. That's probably never going to stop, but it's tough. Yeah, I mean, between that, trying to get a study in, or even playing. I play a lot online, and then between running the business, it's a lot for sure.
Yeah.
But I think the most important thing is I want to spend time with. She wants me to spend time with the kids and not be gone. They don't want to see that I'm gone all the time and quote unquote gambling, if you want to call it that. But I think that's kind of her biggest thing, which is fine. I completely understand it. So we definitely try to come up on agreements and plan ahead. That's the biggest thing.
Justin, before we get to you, Chris, I want to address this. It's hard for people, and especially our loved ones, to understand that what we're doing, and when I play, I consider it also, whether the result is what it is I don't consider it gambling.
Yeah.
This is an investment, and to people outside that don't understand what we do, it's very hard for them to wrap their head around.
Yes.
What we're doing is an investment, just like the stock market, but we're investing in ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And you have proven success in such what I consider a short amount of time. And Justin, we'll get to you in a second, but yeah, how do you explain that to your wife? And my wife understood it pretty quick.
Yeah, and I think she realizes that. The thing is, she realizes that a lot more when you win.
Right.
It's when you're gone for a weekend and you come home and you're down and you lost $5,000, and now you're gone. You spend time away from the family, and now you don't have money.
But you can't win every time, right? We can't. We know we can't win every time. Otherwise, you wouldn't have to have your own business, right?
Yeah, and that's the thing. That's the thing you have to explain. Even they say, I think the professionals, the best MTT players in the world, cash 20% of the time or less. That's one out of every 5 tournaments. Just cashing. That's not even winning.
Yeah. Right.
So I mean, it's tough, and of course, just the variance in the game, and even that little bit of luck, it can play a role. I mean, no credit taken from Justin. He played great this last APO, but he had some amazing spots where he just ran incredibly great. It was awesome to see it. I love to see that, but yeah, sometimes it's hard to explain. But then again, like you said, the times that you do win, it's a lot more easier. And you mentioned before the tricks it plays on the mind, and me and Justin have talked about this a ton, because sometimes like I'll go play an APO and my wife will be so mad that I'm not home, and I play bad. It's there. It's in the back of your mind. No matter how you think it doesn't affect you, it just sucks, And then this last APO, like just the support chief, she was amazing, so supportive, and I felt like I played really great. So
yeah, it makes a big difference. Yeah, Justin, same question. Yeah, let's talk about a little poker life balance and how do you approach it?
Yeah, so for me, I was in a relationship for about 19 years, and then it was one of those things where poker was a little bit of a factor, but it was what it was, but ended up splitting off, and now I've got a fantastic, beautiful, supportive fiance that she gets it. I've explained to her exactly what you and Chris talked about. As far as for me, it's an investment. So like obviously I have my main job, and I'll continue to keep that. But I always want to do side hustle, if you will, or a side business, or something. So I look at this as a business. I look at this for me as a side business, especially over the last year, for me. So, she, my fiance, Krista, she goes with me on a lot of the stops as well.
Nice.
So on weekends when I don't have my kids, that's how I plan my poker schedule. Now, her and I also have one together now here just recently. So she's not able to go with me to all of them, but we'll still be able. She's going to come to Vegas with me for the World Series here next month for part of it for a weekend. And but she goes and enjoys herself, and she's my my cheerleader for sure. But my goals, at least, you always got to have goals and try to manage it like a business. At least that's what I'm trying to do. I I try to go to one stop a month. I try to do one circuit, one MSPT event, one World Series stop, or if APO's in town, I'll count that as my, as my, my tournament for the month. So that's kind of what I do. And then obviously when I have my kids or, trying to balance life, but like Chris said, there's more of it too. Like I have a coach and I probably work with my coach at least once a week, or I'm texting with him. And I'm also, I have to catch up. Like I said, I mean, you guys talk about some of the better players in the St. Louis area, like Chris, or like a Jeff Copeland, or a Craig Welko, or Bill Burns. Those guys are phenomenal players. And for me, I'm still kind of the up and comer, right? So I have to put in twice as much or 3 times as much work sometimes and study just to try to catch up and be on my A game. So that's my plan right now, of trying to climb the ranks, if you will.
Hey guys, producer Robert here from The Winning Ticket. I want to tell you about my friend Brendan Carter. He's an insurance broker right here in St. Louis. He specializes in home and auto insurance, but he can insure it all. Home, auto, renters. It's summer, so your boats, your RVs, motorcycles, seasonal homes, and much more. If you have not had your insurance reviewed recently, you're probably paying too much. And guess what? A quote is free. A 5-minute call is all it takes to get the info for a quote and see if Brendan can save you some money on your insurance. He's a broker, so he can shop multiple companies to give you the best rate. Brendan has been in the business for years and will take care of all of your insurance needs. Have you just moved? Give Brendan a call. Teenage drivers, call Brendan. Kids left at home, call Brendan. You can reach him at 618-234-1121, extension 4. Again, 618-234-1121, extension 4. All of his info is on the Winning Ticket website as well, and you can give him a call and save yourself some money.
Well, I'll tell you what, you talk about up and comer, just anybody wants to look you guys up on Hendon Mob, and it's just in the short amount of time, not only both of yours cashes, especially the Heartland Poker Tour, the $2,500 main event buy-in. That is a big buy-in, and it was your first big buy-in, and you guys made the final table together, correct? In that one?
Yes,
We did.
And so are you guys talking? Let's talk about that. Let's have a little fun. Are you guys communicating throughout the tournament? And I know you're rooting for each other. And let's talk about how we get to the final table. And then once you guys are playing with each other at the final table, I have a rule, and I've always said it to even my best of friends. There's no friends in poker, right? I mean, there is, but there isn't. But I mean, obviously you guys are playing for a big chunk of money. And so let's talk about what it's like to not only get in that spot, but once you're in that spot, what are the thoughts of playing against each other? Justin, you go ahead and start.
For Chris and I, like I said, I mean, we're each other's biggest cheerleader, I think. And there's also a small St. Louis crowd that, I know Chris bounces ideas off other guys, and I will as well. But for us, I look at it as, when you're lifting weights, right, you need somebody to spot you. So I'm constantly like, he's like, man, I'm running, we'll text throughout a tournament. We will. I mean, I'm running bad. I'm just not catching anything. Hey, keep your head up, stay positive, walk away for a little bit, play tight, play this, So we're constantly, and I'm sure Chris is okay with that, saying that, but I mean, we're constantly just trying to hype each other up. Now, once we get to the final table, or if we're at the same table, we play our game. I mean, that's just good etiquette, right? So we're not gonna fold to each other or anything like that. Trust me. This most recent APO, actually on day one, the first day, we were late in the night, and I had a healthy chip stack. I had Chris all in. I couldn't get him out of the tournament. Like I was like, and I historically, Chris has historically had my number, and I did everything to get him out of the tournament. I couldn't get him out. Looking at it now, I'm glad I didn't, because he was able to have we were both able to have nice cashes. Right. But we play poker when we're sitting at the table. There's no real love lost there.
Chris, for you, it's kind of funny. It's kind of like the tables are tournament. You said he kind of owns you a little bit in the poker world. Well, kind of a little, I guess what do you want to call it for owning them in baseball, right? I mean,
Yeah, they've definitely got the best of us in baseball. We did. They do have show me games. I have to bring this up. They do have show me games. We go to Columbia every year and play in the show me games, and it's a round robin tournament, and we played them in the gold medal game, and we finally beat them for gold medal. I think that's the only time I've ever won. But anyway, so yeah, I mean the Heartland. So basically, we started playing together before then. Just before then, we were doing. I won a couple of his house tourneys, and I was just kind of showing him some stuff. So I think it was a couple weeks before the main, or maybe a week before the main. They had the tag team. So I'm like, Justin, I was like, why don't we do the tag team together, or whatever. So we actually final tabled that. There was a few shots and beers involved, so we did. Unfortunately, we finished ninth in that. I think 8th or 9th, and then it was cool because we final tabled it, and then a week later, we're sitting at the final table of the main.
They talked about that a lot during the stream too. Actually, I think Copeland streamed, broadcasted some of that, and they thought that was the odds of that were.
Yeah. But it was a crazy the days leading up because funny story. I actually had a guy who wanted to back me in the main, but I didn't want to pay. I really hate being backed in live events because I usually do very well. So I told him I'd play a satellite for him, and he could pay my full way in the satellite. And then if I win, then I'll give him 40% of the winning. So basically, I didn't have to do anything. So he agreed, and I won. And I played on a Thursday night, and there wasn't many people who played that flight on a Thursday night for the championship. And it got down. I think there were 5 people who made it today too, and it got down to 8 of us. And the table was just insane. It was like Nick Papillo and a couple guys from Chicago, just some really good players. So I ended up busting the 8th. So unfortunately for that guy, I bought in the next day to the main myself. I had all of myself, and of course I come in second. He wasn't very happy about that, but no, just the path there, it was crazy. Justin, like Justin said, he jumped up to a huge chip lead like early, and then I can't remember if I busted or I played the next day, like the next flight. But one of the first hands I sat down to, I flopped trip 6s and had like 2 people jam on the flop, and we held, and then I had a big stack. So I mean, almost the whole tournament, I think we were in the top at least 10 chip stacks, and we kind of just coasted there. There was a point right before the end of day, right at the end of day 2, that I had lost some chips. So I was kind of short going into the final table, not crazy short, but my specialty is definitely playing a short stack. I do that very well.
It's funny you say that, but yeah, I totally understand.
Yeah, I'm not. I'm pretty nitty, so I'm not one to accumulate a ton of chips. But yeah, and then Justin just played really bad at the final table.
I was still learning.
He ended up giving me a lot of money, extra money. But no, he was definitely in development. But I mean, the thing was his style.
It is so cool. That's such a polite way of putting you suck.
No, the cool thing was though, his style was so unique, and a lot of these pros who were playing, they weren't used to it. They didn't know what to do. They weren't used to it. He was donk betting and leaning out bets a lot, and that's not like proper what you're supposed to do. And he was putting pressure on, and like it was just working. His moves were working, and a lot of these guys didn't know what to do. And I mean, it got him that far. And even at the final table, he was doing the same thing. He was putting a lot of pressure on, and a lot of these guys just didn't know what to do. He won a lot of big pots that way, and then just unfortunately, it kind of finally unraveled for him in the last hand. But it happens. And then from that point, I was like, well, dude, you have the potential. Like, let's start working on your game, like what you need to do. And I'll let Justin talk, but I have a very funny story for shortly after the HPT when we went to Chicago.
Oh God.
Yeah, I mean, this is so. I guess I'm trying to find a when you talk about your game, Justin, he's talking about your game in unique ways, and I find that very funny because it's almost like saying, is that madness work when are you knowing what you're doing at the time? That's the point I'm trying to make. Do you know what you're doing at that point?
I mean, you got to remember, I mean, obviously, you know, I'm just learning. I'm just starting to learn, you know, the basics, right? So it's one of those things where it's funny because in the stream, they would always call it like the unconventional swordsman, right? Theory, if you will. And, you know, it's like you're going into a fight not knowing what you're doing, but you're going in guns a-blazing and you know, it really wasn't, I mean, obviously, you know, I knew what I was doing to an extent. But like Chris said, I mean, I'm putting a lot of pressure on people, but you know, I would put pressure on somebody like in one particular hand. I think I was in the big blind. I think I had Jack 7 and I ran up against a guy who actually ended up winning the tournament who had 6-5 and he flopped and turned a set. And, you know, I forget the board exactly, but I was putting so much pressure on him that the only way that guy was calling that hand was if he had a 5. Like it was a broken board with the exception of the 5. So, you know, I pretty much had the guy, you know, all in, and he happened to call and took half my chip stack. But, you know, that aggression, you know, is probably really what got me as far as I did. And like Chris said, I mean, if I could do that, take what I already know, and I still do that to this day. You know, I take little pieces from everybody or coaches or whatever, and I will still do that. I had some pretty good aggression in the most recent APO, but I'm also smarter. I'm more, you know, I'm more aware of my surroundings, you know, nowadays as well. So, but for me, it was like again, if I can do it, anybody can do it, right? So you talk about yourself, or you're talking about an average Joe just sitting at home. I mean, you know, if you gotta have the marbles, if you will, for sure to make those moves and not be afraid of taking a 10, 20, 30, $40,000 loss. And that's what I did. Like Chris said, I mean, I definitely punted away some chips to him, but if I hadn't, that style of play is what ended up getting me to take 5th place in that tournament for 40 something K. So, you know, I don't regret it. That's for sure.
So I'm going to give you guys, I'm going to tell you my little story. On this show, everybody knows that horse racing is my #1 passion. And I started to get into horse racing online tournaments instead of betting cash. And years ago, when I first started playing tournaments, I started with a $200 buy-in. And I actually just caught fire cashing in a lot of smaller events. Well, I finally buy my way into a big event and I win it. And there was this article written about my style of play. And basically of my ignorance of thinking how I play and my strategy, the guy that writing the article basically said, called me out and saying I'm basically an idiot for the way I played. And then I laughed, well, I'm the one who fucking won,
Right.
you know, so who's the idiot, right?
Right.
You know? And the other end of it is I didn't want to give up. He wanted a response from me. And this is one of the things I want to talk about. I'm going to ask you guys without giving up your secrets is I had a certain reason the way I played the final 2 races, right? And it was a strategy of my own. And yes, I was new in a tournament. And hindsight, what I know now, I may not have won that tournament, right? Because of what I know now. But like you say, guns a-blazing, I'm taking my opportunity, and it's a different style. It's kind of set up like a poker tournament. You're given a mythical bankroll, and the person at the top 10% get paid, right? So I had the most, you know, money at the end of the tournament. But without giving up your tools, your resources, I want to know, what do you guys do to get better? And you talk about coaching, Justin. You talk about coaching. You put in the work. Let's talk about the work. Justin, what is the work for you? What does it look like?
You know, for me, like I said, my coach is out of Vegas. So we'll do just a simple Zoom call, and he's got websites that he uses where I go through simulations. Right now, I'm working on simulations for the World Series of Poker main event coming up here this month. So I can play a World Series of Poker main event in about 5 hours. I can play all the hands, and I'm folding whatever hands I'm not playing. And then it's showing at the end of it shows your stats. It's showing hands that you should have played, hands you shouldn't have played, why you bet this. And then, my coach will see those and we can review those together. Or it could also be a simple, conversation with Chris. It could be a simple conversation with anybody in the local community that I talk to. But it's, there's, again, even for me lately, it's also even, we talk about like bankroll management, balance, and different things like that. I've been watching, like a lot of things on Poker Go and even a lot of biographies, on some of the players and how they got where they got. I always find it very, very interesting. And Chris, I think you and I talked about this over the last few months, because as I'm trying to climb, I'm trying to understand people's thought process. I see a lot of people, you go to Hendon Mob and they were making $500,000, or $250,000 a year, or have these big $1 million wins. And then all of a sudden, nothing. Mm-hmm. So what happened? What mistakes did you make? Did you just get out of it to start a business? Did you get out of it because of something with your family life or your kids? I've talked with my coach about that many times. He was playing 250 tournaments a year at one point. And he was just, I think he just got to the point where he needed to slow it down and focus on family and life. So everybody has their story, if you will. But those are some of the things that I'm constantly trying to work on. It's always something different.
Yeah, it has to be, right, to evolve in anything we do. We want to get better. Chris, what does work look like for you?
I follow a few people online. Here's the thing is, I truly believe everyone has to have if you want to be successful, you have to have in some way or another your own style. So when I'm watching coaching videos, I don't know if you know who Ape Styles is, but he's had a lot of huge online success. He's an ACR sponsor. I watched a lot of his training. Same with like Negreanu. I've watched. I think me and Justin have both watched his masterclass and Phil Ivey. The thing is, you're never going to be able to exactly replicate the way that these guys play. Everyone has to have their own style of play in some way or another. So when I'm watching these videos, I'm not thinking, okay, well, I'm going to do exactly what they do, because even some of the things that I think they do, maybe I don't think are right. So I want to incorporate the things into my game that I think will help. So pick pieces from here and there that I think will help my game, instead of, I think so many people, especially new people, will be like, oh, I can just go watch this video. I'll play exactly like this guy, or I'm watching the stream. I'll just play how they play. And I think Copeland talked about that last time he was on your podcast. Like, these guys, some people just watch these streams and they're like, oh, well, I'll just play like that. And they have no freaking clue what's going on.
And Chris, that's probably a lot like a solver too, right? I mean, they're just playing a certain way, right? Instead of having their own, you got to have your own style, and you got to have some variants and some mixes, right?
Yeah. And that's exactly what I want to talk about. You got to change it up, and that's, I guess, Justin, before we, Chris, give me a second. You talk about changing it up. My thought process is, as soon as you said your guns a-blazing going in there, and I know you're inexperienced, but at some point when you're that deep and you've got that stack, did you ever consider switching gears? And we're talking about that, right? Changing up your play. Is that the time to tighten up and kind of back off? Maybe hindsight, maybe that's what you're thinking, but maybe not. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, again, the obvious answer in poker is always it depends, right? So like right. I started once we got to the final two tables, I was a little bit short. And then it was time to get a little bit more aggressive, where I had a big run in Choctaw in January at the WSOP circuit event where I took 8th out of like 1,400. And on that one, I got down to the final 3 tables and I was just very, very patient. And I had an okay chip stack and I just had to pick my spots. And I think too, it depends too, again, it's always the depends, right? But it depends on the person you're playing as well. One thing that I've learned a lot, I talked with Chris about this the last 6 months for me, is where you're playing. People from Texas or Oklahoma play totally different than somebody from St. Louis or somebody, especially in Florida. Where I go down to Florida, I'm seeing people play 3-10 off and going all in. Or, down in Texas, for example, where you may get some of these folks that, not all of them, but a lot of them have that mentality. Hey, I'm Texas tough. You're not going to bluff me. You know what I mean? Like, and that's a real thing. And again, it's not, everybody's different, right? But I feel like there's definitely something, for that. Now, for Chris and I in the most recent APO, I'd won a big hand that propelled me. We got down to 6 players. It took me from 6th to 2nd. And the guys, once it was down to 5 of us, they wanted to talk a chop. And quite honestly, because I'm competitive, I would have liked to have, taken home the trophy, if you will. But Chris took that home. But for me, I was already at 2nd place money. So I have to determine whether or not it's worth a gamble where one hand can take me down to 5th place money that might cost me $20,000.
Yeah.
Where
So, hey,
if I get down to, let's say it comes down to Chris and Chris and I decide to work out some type of deal. Maybe I make a deal where I make an extra 10K or so, but I got to I was weighing my options there whenever we did that. Cause hey, do I want to continue to try to fight this maybe for another 10K and wait a few more guys out? Or do I want to take 2nd place money right now and call it a day? And I was fine with that.
Yeah. So let's talk about the APO. And unfortunately, the Heartland Poker Tour no longer exists. So limited in the Midwest area, I guess we'll just call it this area. We're down to the APO and Mid States Poker Tour, right? Which actually travels quite far. But the Ameristar Poker Open is providing what the Heartland used to, and the World Series, I'm sure will come back at some point to the St. Louis area. But specifically, I watched when you guys were 6-handed in this last Ameristar Poker Open, the APO, and you were last in chips 6-handed when you guys started to talk your first chop, right? And another player who happened to exit out and be the next one out is the one I believe that denied the chop or was part of the ones that wanted to keep playing. Is that correct or no? Or was
no.
One to his left was the one who said no. Is that correct?
It was the one to Justin's left didn't want to chop it.
Yeah,
first.
so he ended up taking the bottom share of the chop, the guy who denied the chop. But Here you go from last in chips to 2nd in chips within 15 minutes. And I wanted to talk about a little bit about that, but getting to the final table, let's talk about that specific tournament. First of all, it's a $1,100 buy-in that St. Louis hasn't had in quite a while. I want to first know what both of your thoughts of. I think it's great that we're starting to get in some bigger buy-ins here in St. Louis. I want to talk about all this. I want to talk about what you guys think. I think the St. Louis poker community is one of the toughest in the nation as far as players' ability. I think we have a solid group of ability here in St. Louis. I could be wrong, but I want you guys to talk about that. I mean, I'm not looking to bash anybody's play by any sense of the imagination, but I want to talk about, I think that the St. Louis poker community is always there for each other. It seems so unbelievable what I've seen over my 30 years in the casino business, seeing how people talk to each other. They get advice from each other and they're happy to give it, and especially rooting for each other. So there's so many things that I want to get to, and I don't know if we'll get to all of them today, but let's talk about the getting to the final table in this last APO. Chris, what was your route and what ultimately made you decide to go ahead and chop?
It was a tough tournament for me. It was it was tough. I was in some spots, but first of all, just St. Louis in general, I think it is definitely a tough. There's a lot of tough players. There's also a lot of really not tough players, so there's a good mix. But like there's chats. There's a bunch of St. Louis chats like on Facebook and everything, and it's just the support system is really amazing. Like, we got some, like Justin was saying, some of our top players. I like to include myself in that, but like Craig Welko is just one amazing player, super nice guy.
Yeah.
Like he'll help you. He'll walk through hands with you. He'll help you with everything. Same with Copeland, super nice dude. I always run hands by them, and they just tell me what they would have done or if I messed up or not. But all those guys. The support system here is really good. Even the girls, are really good players. Brittany and Melissa and Mary. But so I play my style of poker. I like to register early because in the early stages I can be super aggressive, and it sucks for the people who know me because they know I'm super nitty. So when they're at my table, it doesn't work as well. But at the beginning of tournaments, when I sit down with people who don't know me, I raise probably like 60 to 80% of the pots. Where I'm sure if you saw how I played, like at the end of tournaments, I'm playing like 2% of the hands. But it gives that image that I'm bluffing a lot. So as the tournament goes on, if I can, unfortunately, I get moved a lot of tables. But if I can somehow stay at the table, then when I start to bet, I got people calling me when I got. When I usually have the goods, which helps me a lot. So I tend to try to accumulate a lot of chips early and, and give off that image that everyone knows I don't have. But it was tough because the whole tournament, I was running decent. I never, the first day I never had, I think we started with 20,000 chips
30.
in that tournament. 30?
30. Yeah.
30. Okay. 30,000 chips. I got above 30,000 maybe one time in day one in the first 8 hours.
Wow.
So I was just grinding. And then, so we stopped, I think at the end of level or at the beginning of level 16, if I remember right. But
That's
I got me and Justin were at the table, and I walked over to the table when we redrew to 3 tables. I had 30,000 chips, 32,000 chips. That was a starting stack. I played for 10 hours and I had a starting stack. So finally, I think I actually had below. I got down to 22, and I think Greg Radosh, as someone who I just run absolutely terrible against, he gets the best of me like I get the best of Justin. I just can't beat the guy, and he's a great player. He's won two HBCs, but I get it in. It's funny because he goes all in, and I look down at queens, and everyone notoriously knows how bad I run with queens. I've probably lost $300,000 total with pocket queens in tournaments. So I look down at queens, and he's already all in, and I point at my cards, and I go, "This is hilarious!" And everybody at the table already knows that I have queens. I'm like, I call or whatever. Well, he has jacks. So we finally get queens to hold. I think that the river card was a king, and it scared the living shit out of me because I thought it was a jack. But so I think I had just doubled the 40, and then the next time around, I was in Justin's big blind, and he raised 5s, and I jammed ace queen, and I got lucky and hit a queen, and from there on out, me and Justin had a few battles, and I think he dumped, probably not dumped, but I took about 100,000 in chips from him. But it was funny that you were talking about that earlier, like playing against each other, because we don't, like when we're at the poker table, we could give 2 shits. We're gonna blast each other. But there was one hand where he raised and I had the ace nine. He raised my big blind and I had ace nine of diamonds, and I just flatted, and then 3 diamonds came out, and he blasted again, and I just called, and the diamond came out again, and I think the river was a brick, it wasn't a diamond, and he bet, and I called, and he said, "You're good," and just folded his hand. So then I just threw my hand in the muck, and the table was like, "What the hell is going on?" But everybody knew. Everyone knew that we play pretty hard against each other. We don't take any breaks against each other. But with that being said, like we text during the tournaments, man. We pick each other up. I think that's super important to have someone there. Because I mean, even on the last day, I was card dead for 2 hours in day 2. I was down to 4 or 5 blinds with 2 tables left again. I mean, there was not even a hand that I could even remotely try to bluff with. I was just getting 9-2s and jacks 3s, but I mean, it happens. It happens, and you just have to be patient. Finally, luck of the draw, they move me tables. 2 hands later, I have 4.5 blinds. I pick up aces. In my second hand, I had aces all day. And Felix just won a huge pot. He had kings, queens, aces hand, and hit the king.
Yeah.
And he woke up with ace king and doubled me. And then I had a pretty crazy player to my right, Mark Collins. I mean, he's a good player. He's super aggressive. And good thing I was to his left because it definitely helped me. And with players like that who are super aggressive, I usually do pretty well with super aggressive players to my right. If I can catch any kind of cards, I'm typically going to take a lot of chips from them. Usually, and that's what happened. I mean, I doubled up 4 more times and just ran super well the rest of the tournament.
And Justin, did you come into the final table short? Because when I came over 6-handed, you were last in chips. You were really short.
I think when we started the final table, I think I was probably 6th. I think I was in the middle there. I was comfortable coming in and just knew that I had to just kind of pick my spots. And I had the player to my left that wouldn't make the first chop. Anytime I'm in late position and I'm trying to take some blinds or something, I mean, he was re-raising me, and it was tough. And that's really what kind of brought me back down. And then right before we chopped, I had pocket aces, and another player made it 80,000, and I 3-bet to 200,000. He 4-bet me to 600,000. And then I jammed all in, and then he had ace king of spades, and then it was after the flop, it was over. I think 2 queens came on the flop, and it was
yeah. And did you say you had aces?
Yeah. So the aces held. So good time to wake up with those.
The hand before that was the kicker, though.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Justin had ace. He got it in. It's funny because I actually told Justin good game before the river came out because I thought he was dead. The guy raised ace king, and I think Justin was short, so he jammed ace queen, right. And the guy called, and 3 spades came out on the flop. I think the other guy spade.
Yeah.
And Justin was drawn to a two jack gutter ball, and I didn't even realize it on the turn, and then he banked it on the river. And then two hands later, he gets aces versus ace king. It's just crazy how that works. So
that hand, and then right after that, you get the aces, and now you're second in chips. Let's talk about the first talk of chop. What I've learned, and not that I know this personally, but ICM chop seems to favor the short stack.
Yes,
it really does. So before you went on that little couple hand run and put yourself in second position, Justin, were you okay with the chop at I believe that you were going to get 23, 24, 25,000, somewhere around that?
I think my chop was around 17,000.
17,000.
I believe it was at 6. No, there was 17,000 wasn't enough to get me ready to make that deal. I knew that Chris was in the game. I just kind of learned a little bit about Paul. I knew he was a pretty solid player. I think Dino, who was another guy who was there. I knew a few of the players, but I was pretty confident in my skill set. And then also knowing my competition around me, where there was a few of those players didn't have the experience, and I don't have a ton of it, but they didn't have the wins or the cashes that I had or Chris had had. So, I felt pretty confident that I could outplay him or wait it out and be able to ladder up some. So I had zero intentions of making that first chop.
Even though the chop financially favored you where your chip stack was at that time.
Correct. Yeah. It would have been okay, but it wasn't. Again, it's kind of like what I say about with that Heartland, my first Heartland run. When you have a job, and you have a career too, that's something that factors in. And I talked to some of the guys that are full-time pros about this a little bit. I mean, they have a lot more pressure on them to where they have to be able to pay their bills. You know, they have to be able to grind in those cash games and things day in and day out. Or for me, it's all about winning still. Again, I want to make a side gig out of it and be able to, you know, to make some money, but I'm willing to take some risk. And if that costs me $10,000 or $20,000, that's fine. And hopefully at the end of the day, some of those will make up for it.
All right. Hey, Chris, going into that first chop opportunity, you were looking at, I believe, 46, 47.
I was right at 50.
Oh, 50. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, here's the thing is I kind of looked at it the opposite side. I know a lot of those players didn't have experience, but those 5 players, and not putting down any other APO event, but I think our last 5 players was probably the toughest 5 players of any APO final table that were left.
They were definitely tough.
Huh?
I was just saying they were definitely tough. There was no doubt.
And that's just putting not like looking at earnings, but just the way that they were playing. And like I played with those guys all day, so I saw they were playing. I was fine with chopping the first time, because everybody was still really deep. I really would have, wanted to take one more player out, but I was okay with it. The second time, actually, where I would have gotten more money is when I was questioning the chop, because I had just won a decent pot. Justin took a lot of chips from the guy who initially didn't want to chop. I don't remember you saying you didn't want to chop, Justin, but I guess you didn't want to the first time.
I didn't say anything. I let the guy to my left do the talking. He wasn't chopping, so I didn't even bring it up. Yeah,
okay. So he was starting to get low on chips, and he was I felt like he was one of the better players just because he liked to put pressure on. So I figured if we can knock him out, I was kind of leaning on it. So I called I phoned a friend of my wife, and everybody's like, "You're not calling your wife right now." But I phoned her, and I was like, this is what the situation is. And it was starting to get late. She's like, "Go ahead and take it." But honestly, I don't think I would have chopped if it wasn't those players who were at the table, and especially Paul. Paul Feelig is just a phenomenal poker player, phenomenal Omaha player, and he had a lot of chips. And he is not someone that I really want to battle with 3, 4, 5-handed for a lot of money. That's one player that if we played it out, he could have easily won the tournament. And he runs super well, which is great. But that's because he puts himself in those spots to do so. Right. But yeah, he's just a great player. If it wasn't those players, and if we weren't so deep, I definitely would not have chopped. I'm not a big fan of chopping, so it was just the situation. I think even the guy who took the lowest stack still got 26,000, and he had 28 or 30 big blinds. I mean, I was at 100 big blinds, but like Justin said, I mean, one hand goes wrong, and I'm going from the 52,000 I could have just took down to the 16,000 now. So it just takes that one hand, and I just don't think it was worth it with those players and with the amount of chips. If we weren't as deep as we were, if we were a lot shorter, then I definitely think I don't think I chopped there.
Hey David, do you see how at our first HPT event he was saying how I punted off so many chips to him at the final table, and now on this one I'm tougher. I'm tougher competition now.
Hey, you should take it. Honestly, our friends should be the hardest on us out of anyone, right? And we want our friends to be honest, and I would take that as all kidding aside, a huge compliment.
He knows, right? For sure.
Yeah. I mean, it's so great. That's what I talk about. Like I said, I still play. You talk about the work. I put in the work like you guys do when it comes to the horse racing side. Every day it's something. Every day it's a podcast. Believe it or not, it's a 3-hour podcast, 5 days a week. It's always improving, right? Because if you stop trying to learn, you're going to be behind. You are. And even though it's the same game, it's not played the same all the time. I don't know. I can only speak of my personal experience. I never made the transition. It's not about me, but I've never made the transition I played a lot of no limit tournaments, but cash. And I just want to talk a small amount about a cash play. Do you guys even play cash?
I think Justin might play a little more than me. I play pretty little cash.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like to try to focus more on the tournaments, but I'll play cash a lot more than I'll play online. I use online really for practice, but yeah, I'll definitely play cash from time to time. But tournaments for me, again, it's the competition. It's the, there's a winner at the end of the day that I enjoy instead of just going there and, you know, grinding out all day to make your winnings and go home.
Yeah, I mean, just in case that anybody doesn't know about you, both of you, I'm not going to go in exact amounts, but both around a couple $100,000 in live cash earnings. I know, Chris, you're a little higher than that, especially with the last win. But in the short amount of time, Justin, you've been playing it. It's very impressive. And one of the things I love about having you guys on is when you say anybody can do it. Anybody can do it if they're willing to put in the work, right? Anybody can hit one time. That's just a recreational player. But to do it on a consistent basis, we talk about this chop. And that's why it's like, oh my God, 50,000. What are you thinking about, right? You're locking up 50,000. But you're also planning on and expecting to be in this position many times in your life, right? There's somebody who was a rec player who won their way in and doesn't play very much for 50,000. What are these guys crazy? What are they? I mean, how do you not lock that up, right? And take the chance of only getting 13,000 or 16,000, I believe what was the lowest. I mean, because we know how tournaments can go, but the thought process isn't just this one tournament. It's both of you are expecting to be in this spot many more times in the future. And poker's a lifelong game. It's not what's right in front of you all the time.
Well, and that, another thing is, for me, my mentality is that, that also helps put a little bit, anytime I have a big cash, I want to take some of that and put that in my nest, if you will. And then I want to reinvest some of that also. So for me, winning, it was 45 for me was my chop. I'm able to take part of that, put that away, or do whatever I need to do with that as far as my earnings. And the rest of it, I can reinvest. But my mindset also was, I know how much it's going to cost me in Vegas next month, right? So I'm like, okay, I need to build a little bit more to be able to, help fund that instead of taking that. And now I don't have to take out of my, I don't have to take extra out of my nest, if you will.
So one of the things is that I find just absolutely amazing, especially tournament, the variance. And you talk about, Chris, you talk about 20 for the best of the best cash 20% of the time. And we're talking about multiple buy-ins to many tournaments. And now we're not even factoring in the travel expenses, right? I know that's a part of everything, but places like Vegas, that people that live there, they don't have to travel to really play. Everything comes to them. But here in the St. Louis market, if you're going to go out and do this, especially on a serious level, the traveling expenses alone, not only fading the buy-ins, the juice, everything that comes along with it, you got to fade travel expenses. So anybody who thinks that's why I say when you get to that point and you see 50,000, that carries you a long way. And I totally understand thinking of not playing it, or not taking the chop and playing it out. But I guess the last question I have for both of you is when you take all these travel expenses in, does that enter your mind when you're taking a chop like that? That's why you want the whole thing, right? I mean, that's the whole point, is because you're going to have to fade so much more. I don't know if the travel expenses or the food that comes in, but everything comes into play, right? You're not a winner. You're not beating it unless you're beating all of it.
Yeah, it's like I said at the beginning of the conversation, it's a business. So I have to factor that in. I mean, for me right now, if I'm traveling to one tour stop a month, and I've got a couple of bullets, 2 to 3 bullets maybe in my back pocket plus travel, my expenses are going to be $50,000 a year. And that's obviously the World Series and things as well. And a lot of people, it's going to be a lot of your full-time guys, it's going to be more than that.
Right.
So I look at it as, hey, if I got 50,000, 60,000 in expenses every year, and I can make 150, 200 a year, now we're cooking. Now we're making some profit. But yeah, you have to factor that in for sure.
Chris,
it's me. I mean, it's weird for me because it's kind of different, because when I travel or when I'm paying for something, I usually take that out of like my actual business instead of my poker business. Like when I'm playing, when I factor in my poker buy-ins and my winnings, that's strictly poker. And then with the travel and the food, that's more like my personal. I mean, I'm a DJ and I play slots too, so I'm
I'm gonna say
fortunate.
first to say thank you for doing so. Yeah, but anyway, go ahead.
I'm fortunate and unfortunate with that because sometimes I'll win huge and sometimes I'll lose huge. But one thing it does do is it allows me most of the places when I go back there, I don't pay for anything.
Right.
Like when me and Justin are going to Vegas, we're gonna go for the main. He's going a couple days before, so he might have to fork up something. But when we go there, our hotel, we're gonna stay together. Our hotels are paid for, and our food is paid for. All of our food is paid for the entire trip.
So is this a recommendation to people listening to fire off and be a total degen in slots to get free rooms? I mean, I'm just asking, is this your path? Is this what is this what we're telling people to do here, Chris?
No,
What?
absolutely 100% don't do that.
And why we're doing it and why we are doing it, a few cocktails along the way, right?
Yeah. No, and believe it or not, I mean, the thing is, people will sit there and play like 50-cent slot, like penny slots for hours and hours, and like, lose or win a couple $100. Like if anyone's gonna take the advice of doing this, I recommend one, have a big bank, one, have a big bankroll, and two, you're gonna have to max bet if you want to win because it's not gonna work out any other way.
I 100% agree with you. There are perks if you're gonna be. It's funny, we're laughing, we're joking about it, but you're allowed to have entertainment money. I mean, we're human beings. We that's our entertainment, whatever
Sure.
we decide to do with our money. But you're able to separate the two, right?
Yeah.
It's a business, and it's a profitable business for you, playing on the poker side. But we all have our, as funny as it is, right? You can be that degen because you have a job, right? Because you have your own business. But if you were 100% solely, I mean, you still might go off on slots. You still, and I call those leaks. And it's funny, I talked to a lot of, my poker friends, and leaks we didn't even get the leaks. We'll have to have you back, guys, to talk about, what leaks. I could spend all day explaining my leaks over my 50-year life. That's why I have to work for a living. So I'll just say, it's totally separate. You're able to separate them, right?
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, Justin, sometimes we'll go on trips and Justin's like, why don't you just save all the money that you're going to lose on slots and go play high roller tournaments? He's like, you should. And he's serious. And honestly, I probably should. He's like, because if you spend over the course of the year, if you spend $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 on slots, you could play in 2, 3, 4, 10, or $15,000 tournaments. Where if you cash one, you're winning, $500,000-$600,000, which it makes sense. But it is nice because the thing is, if you win, you get the money and then you get the perks as well. So it's
right.
plus.
Yeah, absolutely. No, for sure. I have my own story I still get free rooms from the Venetian from one 24-hour degen play.
Right.
And it was profitable. I made $1,800. I pressed that button on that machine at max credits for 24 hours, made $1,800, and here I am. I think 7-8 years later, still getting free rooms.
Yeah.
So
That's crazy.
Yeah, pretty incredible. And my friends can't believe it. Every time I get in the mail, I call them, tell them, still getting free rooms. And every time I go to Vegas, the host will say, hey, David, I need a play from you if we're going to continue to give you free rooms. I hope this doesn't reach them and I get canceled out. But it's I literally told him last time, you're not getting a play for me. I'm here to do my first radio show. And he thought that was me. He goes, well, the next time, so I get 2 free nights to Venetian every 2 months. For the last, and I haven't given them a play in many years. So it's funny that there are perks to doing that. But so before we go, what's next? We've got the World Series of Poker. You both playing the main?
Oh yeah. We're gonna.
Okay. And is this a buy-in? Is this a buy-in, or have you guys won your way in?
We tried. We failed.
Well, we
funny.
We won our way in. It's just through the APO.
Yeah.
Right.
No,
Well, yeah. Okay.
It's funny because we both played in a satellite. We won to the final table, right? 2 days later, that Tuesday, we play in a satellite, and there's 9 people, and we come in 8th and 9th.
Oh no.
But that's how it goes. But no, I can't let you leave without hearing the story.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about it. I wasn't going to go ahead.
So we final table the HPT. You know, I make over 100,000. Justin makes 45,000. We get to talk and we're like, man, we should start, you know, playing more, whatever, blah blah. I'll start helping you out. He hired a coach. So our next stop, Chicago, HPT Chicago. I think it was like January or February. We won in November. So we're on the plane. We're talking the whole time. We're talking poker strategy, and he's, you know, looking at the hand structures and charts and things like that. And we're watching videos of the final table stream, and I'm like, I tell him, I'm like, Justin, you have to stop flatting your opens. Like, it's losing poker. Like, just it's kind of common sense for people who study poker. Like,
right, I'm going to stop you there just for some terminology. I like that so people understand what we're saying.
Definitely.
Please explain what flatting your opens means.
So there's obviously the big blind and the small blind, right? So, and then you have your first act. So the first person who puts money into the pot is typically, it's a study that it's losing poker to just call the big blind and not make a raise. Okay. So that's flatting. That's what's flatting. Instead of opening the pot with a bet, it's just called flatting the big blind or flatting your opens.
Got it.
So I explained this to him, and his coach is telling him the same thing. Well, it's actually good you brought that up, because Justin doesn't understand that terminology at the time.
At the time.
Okay. All right. I was like, he's got to understand it now. I mean, yes.
At the time. So we go to Chicago. We start playing, and like an hour in or something, like something crazy, he comes up to me. He's like, they got me. He's like, I'm going to go rebuy. I'm like, that was fast. And dude, we've only been playing for an hour or whatever. So I'm playing. A couple hours later, or maybe it wasn't even a couple hours, walks back up to me. I busted again. He's like, I don't know what the hell's going on. I'm just running bad. So we're on break, and he's like, you know, telling me. So then we play all day, and I'm pretty deep in the day, and I get a text, and he says, fuck this, I'm on my way to the airport. I go, dude. He goes, I just spent however many bullets. I don't want to say, Justin, you can say you want.
I think it's about $7,000 worth. I don't know. It was the worst. Well, and I think that was 2 days. We were up there for 2 days. That was the worst weekend I'd had. Yeah.
Okay. Mind you that we've had this discussion. If you listen to Jeff Copeland talked about sometimes 9 buy-ins deep, right?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Go ahead. So we're headed to the airport, right?
Well, it was just to the airport. I'm still playing. I made day 2. Unfortunately, Queens. I busted with Queens, but so I'm like, dude, like, so after it, I'm trying to concentrate. So after it, I'm like, what happened, dude? And he's like, well, I'm opening every single hand, and I'm like, you're like pre-flop, right? And he goes, yeah. Well, we figured out he was 3-betting every single bet. So every time
I was just raising anybody. Every time it was my action, I was raising.
Every single bet.
Listen to you. He is not flatting. I mean, what's the problem here? The problem is you're 3-betting to somebody with a better hand. Is that was the problem?
Oh, no, any it wasn't any. So let me explain a little better if people don't know the poker term. So pre-flop, before there's any betting done, is when you're really not supposed to flat, unless, I mean, a lot of people do it with bigger hands like or middle pairs like kings or aces, but he was raising. But not only after that, on after the turn, after the flop, he was doing the same thing. He was re-raising. After the turn, he was doing the same thing. After the river, he was doing the same thing.
That was guns a-blazing for sure.
But I mean, at any point you could have built a chip stack, right?
Well,
I mean,
I learned my lesson. That was in January of 20. So I learned my lesson, and then in February, right before COVID, they had HPT back in St. Louis, and I took 15th, I think, for about 7,500. So at least I got my, I learned my lesson fairly quickly.
So let me just say this, and maybe you'll agree or disagree with me, but COVID kind of saved your bankroll. I mean, COVID's right after that, so and you couldn't play anywhere, so maybe you had time to regroup and rethink your
Well,
strategy.
I think he figured it out pretty quick what we were talking
Yeah.
about.
No, I'm just having fun with you.
That was funny.
So obviously not too funny. You're not laughing.
Oh no, it's great. Trust me, we laugh it up all the time. I think it's hilarious. So it's again, it's just one of those things where you just you gotta fail and fail in life, fail in poker, and realize your mistakes and how you can get better. And again, there's right now my biggest thing is I'm continuing to work on math, just the mathematics and pot odds and different things like that. I want to be able to, and it's a constant. It's something that you're constantly working on, and that's what I think is great. Kind of what I talked about at the beginning is, for myself to have some of the success that I have and that Chris has had. I mean, in the last 6 months, I'm over 100,000 in the last 6 months in wins.
Yeah.
So and not to toot my own horn, but if I can do that consistently and still not be fully developed, once I get to that point, sky's the limit. Hopefully.
Yeah, I 100% agree. So we're both playing the main, right?
Yes, sir.
Different flights.
Different flights. Okay. Do you already have your flight home booked? I'm sorry. That's terrible. All right. So the question
I have not. I have my fiance. She's coming back 4th of July. And I have not. I have backup options. I've got 3 tournaments. I'm going to play the $1 Million Bounty for sure. I'll play the main, and then as a backup option, I'll play the 1-drop, and then we'll see how I'm running if we need to do anything else. Hopefully not, but we'll see.
Yeah. So different flights. I had an opportunity, and I'm just going to share this with you guys. I shared it with Jeff. I had the opportunity of playing the main event in 2014, and I was playing really well and running the worst I've ever run in my life. And then I got to the main. I just got home from a 12-day trip of losing every day, and I got an offer to play the main a few days later. And I even told the person that, hey man, I'm playing well, but I'm running horrible. And he said, this is your once in a lifetime shot. Don't tell me no again. Be here on Sunday and play the main. So I made it to day 3 and busted out a level before the money, but I never had any real chips except after day 1. Day 1, I did very well. I had aces 5 times and won all 5 times. And I had a really good day 1. Day 2, I played so tight. I played horrible. I played absolutely horrible day 2. And I couldn't even believe I made it to day 3. And then I played bad again and short stack. So I don't know if you talk about people putting you in, and I play better. I play better on my own money. And I know it's usually the opposite way for a lot of people that get backed. But I play much better knowing that it's my money on the line, and I can get the actual original buy-in out of my head. I was never able to get my friend's 10,000 out of my head that I'm playing with his money. And I don't know if you guys have any experience with that, but if you do, what are your thoughts? It's usually the opposite. Most people play better on other people's money because they don't want to, they want to do well for them. But I play better on my own money. Chris, what are your thoughts on somebody putting you in?
I think you want to talk about this a little bit, but when I play online, I saw a lot of action because it's a different animal, and you're playing really, really, really experienced players online. Typically, with the stakes I play online, I play higher stakes, so it's a lot of European guys who are really good, and of course with all the online stuff, you just don't know what's going on. So I like to be less risk, or risk averse, or less risk averse, whatever it is. I like to take less risk when I'm playing online. When I play live, I absolutely hate selling action. Like, me and Justin will trade. Sometimes we'll swap, and I'll do that with only a few people. Like I do it with Welco. And I'll do it with Ian Nelson. I don't know if you know Ian or not, but he's a young player who's really solid. But the reason I don't, it's not so much because here's the thing: if you're going to do that, then you have to have that mindset that you really, and it's unfortunate, but you have to have the mindset that you can't care about other people's money if you're going to do that.
Right.
That's just because if you're thinking about that, like you said, just you're not going to play the same.
Right.
I don't like selling action because I'm greedy. When I win, I don't like to give people money. I still haven't paid Justin for a lot, but
They do have there is Venmo. I'm just throwing that out there.
He'll square up
times already.
I know.
But yeah, I think if you're gonna go that route, that it sucks and it kind of sounds selfish, but you just can't worry about the other person's money, because if someone's willing to give you that money, they obviously have faith in you, and they obviously know that, okay, I could be burning this money. So I think if you're going to go that route, you definitely have to have that out of your head, or you're not going to play the same.
Are you, Justin, are you approached at all about people putting you in, especially headed to the World Series?
I've had a couple family members chat with me a little bit about things. I mean, like Chris said, I'm kind of greedy. I believe in myself enough
Right.
to where, if people wanted to, I might sell like up to 5% or something like that. I probably wouldn't sell any more than that. For me, I've never really sold action. Again, like I said, I've got my job, and it's, that's just kind of how I do it. Occasionally my uncle and I, or he's kind of a rec player, he'll win a few cashes here and there. We'll go to Hollywood or Ameristar and play like a small one. He'll be like, hey, you want to split? Every now and then I'll split with him, but I'm also like, hey man, I'm putting all these hours in. I need you to put these hours in if you want you want to split. So sometimes we'll just do something like Chris is talking about. We'll do a 10% save or, something like that.
All right, guys. Hour and a half in, it's gone by like a split second. I could talk to you guys all day. I'd love to have you back, especially after your guys' trip to Vegas. And if either one of you happen to make a deep run in the main event, you got to let me know. I'm sure you guys will keep me up to date. I mean, I don't want you to bother you, but let me know if you're making a deep run. I'll come out there and be your biggest cheerleader. Would love to do that. I know you guys will be out there for each other. When are you guys leaving?
I leave Friday, July the 1st, and Chris is coming in the 4th, right, Chris?
Yep, July 4th. I get in early, and I'm going to play the Millionaire. The Millionaire, for anyone who is going to be in Vegas, it's $1,000 tournament, and there's going to be a lot of people playing, but one person is going to win $1 million in a bounty. So the value there is just crazy. I highly recommend playing that tournament if you're going to be out there. Yeah,
the mystery bounty was new to me. I had never heard of it before. Eric Ewing was on, and
oh really?
AP, yeah, he was on with a couple. My episode before Jeff and Britt, and to talk about the APO in the beginning of our sports show, and he had brought the mystery bounty, and I thought it went over really well. Did you guys get a chance to play that in the APO this time or not?
Unfortunately.
Well, results aside,
No.
we're not going to talk about the tournament itself, but the general idea of the bounty being second day and you have to be in the money.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you, I like the idea. I think it's pretty incredible. And yes, one person is going to get that $1 million, but also if you have one bounty, you're guaranteed to get your buy-in back.
Yeah.
And plus the min cash, right?
Right.
Yes. Yeah, you actually min cash day one at the end of day one. Okay. So you don't even make day two to min cash, at least in the Millionaire, in the $1 million bounty. But no, I did want to give a shout out also real quick before to APO. I thought, I'm a bigger buy-in guy, so I really appreciated that. I tend to do really bad in smaller field or bigger field, small buy-ins.
Right.
But I thought the APO and Eric and all them, they ran it amazing this time around. Not that I wasn't before, and I know they can't really control the cashier lines and things like that, but besides the things they can't control, I thought the structures were great. I thought the bounty structure was great. Yeah. And the main event structure was just phenomenal. It was shout out to those guys for running that. It was awesome.
Yeah, I appreciate that. The structure is one of the things that I heard the most appealing about this last APO were the structure changes. and the Mystery Bounty's new, but the structure was fantastic.
It
And
was.
in the main, especially when we talk about $1,100 buy-in, it gives, I believe, that the better structure is more of an advantage to the better player. That's just
Yes,
how
of course.
right.
I
Right.
mean, looking at the results, yeah. No, I'm just
Well,
kidding.
right. Well, of course, you're sitting here with me, right?
No, I'm just
all
kidding.
right.
We had a lot of great players. It was a lot of fun. There was a ton. The field, it was a really loaded field this time. It was tough.
All right. Next time, guys, I've been trying to get Craig Welko to come on. He
He'll
finally
come on.
agreed. He finally agreed. So we're going to wait till after the World Series, and hopefully you guys will join us with Craig. How's that sound?
Oh yeah,
That'll
absolutely.
work.
All right. You got to
I love
keep on him, though, because he might change his mind and decide. Hey, Craig, I know you're going to be watching this, so we'll make sure I have you. Guys, thank you so much for spending the time with me, and I look forward to hearing how your trip went, and keep us up to date. All right.
All right, Dave. Appreciate it.
Thanks, David. Thanks for having us.
All right, guys. Chris Audrain and Justin Colony. Appreciate you guys. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Hey guys, producer Robert here from the Winning Ticket. I want to tell you about my friend Brendan Carter. He's an insurance broker right here in St. Louis. He specializes in home and auto insurance, but he can insure it all. Home, auto, renters. It's summer, so your boats, your RVs, motorcycles, seasonal homes, and much more. If you have not had your insurance reviewed recently, you're probably paying too much. And guess what? A quote is free. A 5-minute call is all it takes to get the info for a quote and see if Brendan can save you some money on your insurance. He's a broker, so he can shop multiple companies to give you the best rate. Brendan has been in the business for years and will take care of all of your insurance needs. Have you just moved? Give Brendan a call. Teenage drivers, call Brendan. Kids left at home, call Brendan. You can reach him at 618-234-1121, extension 4. Again, 618-234-1121, extension 4. All of his info is on the Winning Ticket website as well, and you can give him a call and save yourself some money.
I guess I'll have to chew them up and spit them out.